You ever see someone snap in a way that flips the whole story upside down? That's what happened that winter at Lincoln High, first big snow of December. The kind that looks soft and magical for about 10 minutes before it gets stomped to dirty slush. And there's Kira Valdez, barely 5 feet tall, hugging her old blue coat like it's the last shield she's got left, trust me. If you ever wanted to disappear in a place like this, you'd learn to shrink yourself too. You know what I mean? Every morning she walked those halls, eyes glued to the linoleum, dodging clusters of kids who didn't even bother hiding their stares. Her family only just landed here from Phoenix after her dad lost his job, and nothing felt right. Her thick black hair that never lay flat, thrift store clothes, the whole outsider thing clinging to her skin. But the real trouble started every time Trevor Hartwell opened his mouth. Trevor, you know, the type 6-foot-tall, quarterback jawline, mayor's son swagger. Never a day in his life he didn't get exactly what he wanted, and right behind him his two shadows, Jake Morrison and Brad Shun, all of them bored, rich, and mean, the kind of kids who treat cruelty like a varsity sport. "Watch where you're going, Valdez," Trevor'd bark, and Kira would flinch, quicken her pace, maybe mumble sorry, and just pray he'd move on, but he never did. "Sorry doesn't cut it, Phoenix girl," he'd laugh, twisting the nickname so hard it hurt, and behind him his boys would snicker and echo every line, making sure everyone saw who was on top and who was underneath. But here's the thing, nobody at Lincoln High knew Kira wasn't soft. She wasn't weak. She'd spent the last 8 years sweating and bleeding on a jiu-jitsu mat in Phoenix. Her Uncle Miguel running her through drills so brutal she sometimes saw stars. But he'd always tell her, real strength is knowing when not to fight. Kira kept that part of herself locked away, scared of what might happen if she ever let it out, scared she'd lose control, or worse, become someone she didn't recognize. Most days, she drifted through classes half invisible, found sanctuary in the library where Mrs. Patterson, the librarian, pretended not to notice how often she'd sit in the back corner with her lunch unopened, just grateful for a place no one was laughing. If she had a friend, it was Danny Rodriguez, shy, sweet, too smart for his own good, always scribbling in a notebook and never quite meeting your eyes. But when he smiled at Kira, she felt seen for the first time in months. "Did you finish the lab report?" he'd ask, his voice just a little nervous, and for 40 minutes, they could pretend they were just kids doing chemistry, not targets. But that illusion never lasted long. See, Trevor and his crew had a sixth sense for weakness. One slip, one smile between Kira and Danny, and suddenly the whole hallway was watching. "Looks like Phoenix girl found herself a boyfriend," Trevor'd boom, the words heavy as bricks, and you'd feel the whole crowd lean in, phones out, hungry for a show. "We're not dating," Danny would mutter, cheeks burning, but that only made things worse. The taunts got meaner, nastier. Every day, another little cut, another shove, books knocked from Danny's hands. Kira's name stretched out in mocking voices, but nothing that would get them expelled, just enough to make every step through school feel like walking through a minefield. It only got worse as the winter deepened. 15 below. Kira's coat, so thin it may as well have been paper, but her family couldn't afford a new one, so she just pulled it tighter and kept her head down. One day, right after lunch, Trevor and his boys decided they'd had enough of just words. "Hey, Phoenix girl, nice coat did you find in a dumpster?" Trevor sneered, and when Kira tried to keep moving, Jake and Brad boxed her in, crowd already gathering, phones filming, the whole thing spiraling out of control. "Maybe we should help you out if that coat's not keeping you warm." And before she could react, Trevor yanked at her collar, ripping the fabric, the sleeves catching, cold air slicing through, everyone laughing like it was the funniest thing in the world. I wish I could tell you someone stepped in. They didn't. Danny tried to push through, but got shoved back. Kira, standing there with her coat half off, felt something in her just snap. You know that feeling? When you're done being the punchline. In that frozen second, she remembered every hour on the mat, every bruise, every lesson about control, and suddenly, it was like she'd stepped out of her own skin and into something fierce. "Give me my coat back," she said, voice flat. And for the first time, Trevor hesitated, just a flicker of doubt. But it was there. "Or what?" He sneered and tossed her coat to the floor, grinding it beneath his boot. What happened next, is the kind of thing people replay on their phones 1,000 times and still don't quite believe. In one smooth motion, Kira closed the gap, grabbed Trevor's shirt, pivoted, and sent him crashing to the floor, a perfect hip toss, clean and hard, the sound of him hitting linoleum echoing down the hallway. Jake lunged at her, all muscle and no technique. She sidestepped, caught his arm, flipped him over her hip, dropped him beside Trevor. Brad rushed next, wild with panic, and she tripped him clean. All three of them sprawled at her feet while the crowd went dead silent. She stood over them, coat still torn, not even out of breath. "Here's how this is going to work," she said, voice steady, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're going to leave me alone, leave Danny alone, and leave everyone alone who can't fight back. Because if you don't, I'll be here. And trust me, you don't want to see what happens next." Trevor, face red, tried to muster some threat. But Kira just cut him off. "Can't just what? Can't just defend myself? Can't just decide I'm done being your victim?" She picked up her coat, brushed it off, and for the first time, she looked him right in the eyes and didn't flinch. The video went viral by the end of the day. Kira, the invisible girl, now the center of every conversation. Some kids apologized for standing by, some wanted a selfie, but most just stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Even the teachers paid attention, suddenly noticing the stuff they'd always ignored. Trevor and his boys, when they finally slunk back to school, weren't the same. No more strut, no more picking on easy targets, like they'd seen the edge of something dangerous and didn't want to go near it again. But the twist, the real shift, wasn't just about Kira. A week later, she saw a freshman cornered by upperclassmen, about to lose his lunch money. Without thinking, she stepped between them. "Is there a problem?" she asked, and just like that, the bullies melted away her reputation enough to end it before it started. The freshman, still shaking, said, "Thank you," and Kira just nodded. "You don't have to take it." Nobody does. You could feel it changing one small moment at a time. Kira walked the halls not as a victim, but as someone who knew her worth and swagger, didn't threaten, just carried herself different. She and Danny grew closer, sharing lunches, homework, small victories. Told her he'd never met anyone braver. And maybe that was true, or maybe she was just tired of being scared. The bullies faded into the background, and slowly, kids started standing up for themselves, for each other, the way Kira had shown. Yeah, the winter stripped more than her coat. It peeled away the lie that silence keeps you safe, that going along is enough. Turns out, the real power wasn't in her fists, but in her voice, in her choice to say no more and mean it. Maybe that's what courage looks like: quiet at first, but unstoppable once it finds its feet. And as for Lincoln High, well, the legend of the girl who fought back lingered long after the bruises faded. A reminder that sometimes it just takes one person to change everything, one moment, one decision, and the world tilts just enough for everyone to see themselves a little braver than before. So how do you think? Was Kira right to fight back? Or should she have kept her head down and waited for the storm to pass? I'm curious, where do you draw the line between defense and revenge? Drop your thoughts below, share your story if you've got one, and let's talk about what it really takes to change the rules.